Much, Madam Clerk. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Lake Worth Beach Special Commission meeting. It's our first public budget hearing at the City Hall Chamber on Thursday, September 12th, 2024, at 5:05 p.m. May I have the roll call, please?
Mayor Betty Rush,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Mimi May.
Here, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good.
Commissioner Ronaldo Diaz.
Here.
Thank you very much. We on the agenda, it doesn't say public comment, but we're going to put in do we have consensus to put public comment in after the Pledge of Allegiance before we get started? Consensus for that?
You have consensus, but I specifically asked that we indicate prior to putting out every announcement of the meetings whether there would be or wouldn't be,
Right.
to
Apparently
avoid
it was-
exactly this
Apparently it was
situation.
an oversight, and folks are able to speak, so.
Yes,
we're
but
gonna-
people don't know that in advance, and that's why we agreed on a policy that we would put it on the announcement, there would be or there wouldn't be public comment. That needs to be
And
made
it was
clear.
an oversight, and then we'll correct it. So, Sarah, will you lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, ma'am.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I have two public comment cards up here right now. Does anybody else want to turn in a public comment card before we get started? Speak now or literally forever hold your peace. Okay, Ephraim Jones. Mr. Jones, come on up. And this is about the budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Good afternoon, everyone.
just come up to the microphone, make sure it's turned on. You got to face us.
Oh, it's not good.
You're talking to us, Mr. Jones.
Sorry.
That's okay. And you have 3 minutes,
Yes.
and just your name and address.
Good afternoon, everyone.
First, your name and address.
My name is Ephraim Jones. I live at 725 South X Street.
Thank you.
And I've been living here for about maybe let me tell you about 35, 36 years. I've been living in Lakewood, and I bought a home down there. And my problem is this. I get these two letters. I have two letters right here. One for garbage and one for sewer. And maybe about 2 or 3 years now, I've been down here, and we talk about the sewer business on this show, and we come to agreement that the sewer, whatsoever run off the house stop. For I couldn't believe what's going on, that you have to pay for the water that fall off your house to the sewer. And we have to pay for that. And now it come around again, we see where we have to, I don't say nothing about the garbage, for the garbage must picked up, and it sound reasonable to what they said. But the next one is the next sewer come up again, this one, Sledder, and say we have to pay again. And if we don't pay, then our property would be seized. I don't like that trend. For we work hard in Lake Worth here. If you check around Lake Worth here, there's a lot of poor people live on this side here. Rich people live over there. So we live over here, but we've been pressured at all times. Every time they come around, they say you have to do this and you have to pay this and you have to pay that. But there is nobody stand up for you to say, well then, you know, Lake Worth, we should do this or do that. If we look at Lake Worth and look at Lantana, I put the small city right here. I'm not kidding. It more improved more on Lake Worth. Lake Worth coming like junkie, filthy. The streets, look at the roads. They look whole lot of pothole. That's all they walk around with little asphalt and dumping them. That's all. And the road, they filthy, ugly. Even the road, they don't sweep them. They're nasty, dirty, filthy. And you have nobody to talk to. Only time you see is when politics, time to vote. Everybody come and say,
That's time.
oh, we can do this and do that. And that's horrible. That's not right for the citizens of
Okay,
Lake Worth.
Mr.
We
Jo-
suffer at this side. I'll finish.
No, I would like you to write you down your phone number so I can call you.
Yes, please.
Here,
Yeah.
I don't want to say, you don't have to say it out loud. Everybody's going to call you.
Well, I don't know.
Just
What's
give me,
going on
you
here?
can't talk anymore, you just give me your phone number.
Okay.
What? And your, he has his address on there. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Let's see if I can murder this name. Oh, that's Mr. Jones. Oh, I gave you the wrong. John Lynch? Okay. It is hard to read. What did you say?
I write like a doctor.
You do write like it then.
John T. Lynch, DVM, better known as Terry. 1502 Lake Osborne Drive, Lake Worth. That's my business, Lake Osborne Animal Clinic. I want clarification about this stormwater assessment, okay? You made this bill up in 2008. You all of a sudden, in 2008, all of a sudden said, okay, we got to pay for stormwater. And I guess and what I need to know is, who is assessed this? Is it just businesses?
Stormwater? No.
Okay, am I assessed by the size of my parking lot? That's what I was told in 2008. How am I assessed?
Okay, we can't answer questions from here at public comment, but I'm going to ask that you, Dr. Lynch, and you take good care of our animals. He could call Mr., who should he call you? Okay, call Mr. Brown. That's Mr. Brown, who's the acting city manager.
Okay.
And his number is 586 1720. Thank you. Oh, good, well done. Well done. 1720, and he'll explain that to you.
And the only other question is, if you don't have a drain anywhere close, why am I assessed a drainage fee? I guess I need to ask him
He will,
that too.
he will be
All these
happy to,
questions are
he will
in.
be delighted to answer your
Okay, cool,
questions.
then.
What did he say?
Could have saved on the trip.
Could have said really. Oh, geez.
That's okay, I'm not seeing the lovely.
Oh, we love seeing yours. Okay, up next then would be Dennis Moore.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Moore. I'm representing the Lake Worth Church of the Nazarene that's been in the city now for 76 years. We received the non-ad valorem assessment or proposed assessment, and to our great surprise, discovered that there was a 50%, if my math is correct, increase. Looks like there's a 50% increase in the proposed budget, and there's obviously a 50% increase in what our church is being assessed for stormwater. I made 3 phone calls to the city and had to leave a voicemail once. I finally talked to the executive assistant for the city manager. And basically I was told, we have no information. You have to show up at this hearing in order to get information about what's going on. So I did get a call late today, voicemail, saying that an engineer would call me back, is out of town, would call me back sometime next week. So I was coming here trying to find out what is this all about? What is the justification for a 50% increase? And has the city explored every possibility at looking at other alternatives? Have we looked at the possibility of farming this out to a private enterprise? But this is going to have a huge financial impact on our church. We're working to survive in a very difficult situation today. And so a 50% increase is going to have a dramatic and negative impact on our ability to survive and to be a part and to have an impact on the city ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's all I have public comment. Thank you.
Hang on, Madam Mayor, can I just ask a question? Can we just have clarification for the people who are listening, what 50% really was? Because that makes it sound
It does sound like,
ginormous.
sure, yeah.
And I was just, they're looking it up, because I didn't bring that with me either, what the actual number is going to be.
You got lucky.
Just call them Lucky Charms. There you go.
Today's your lucky day. But I bet you're not going to think that when you, let's see. That's okay. Abel is your last name. Go ahead and introduce yourself and your address.
Hello, my name is Tyler Abel. We've been a resident here in, our address as well, 1718 North D Street.
Right.
Lakewood, Florida. Lakewood Beach now.
Thank you.
We've been a resident here for 15 years, and we love living here in Lake Worth Beach. Its location is quite amazing, and South Florida is an amazing place to be. However, we are quite alarmed on how slow, as for instance, when they raised the taxes to fix the potholes, here we are many, many years later, and they're still not fixed. You know, some streets are done, some streets look nice. By the time they finish one street and they finish the next, the street they finished 4 years earlier already starts to look bad. So our concern is if we give you this new allocated funds, how long is it gonna take? Is it gonna be within budget, or are we gonna be back here in a couple years only to pay more in taxes? Because it never goes down. It only
Never
goes
will.
one way, and it goes up. And we already don't live in an affordable area. And I think all of us want to ask, what are we getting in return for this investment? I mean, we're talking about the city already gets north of $70 million, is my understanding, every year. I don't know what the exact funds you guys get, but I do know that it's, you know, in the tens of millions of dollars. And, you know, I think anybody could ask if somebody gave a private investment company tens of millions of dollars, I'm pretty sure they would be working a lot faster and probably have a lot better of a product. And so the only concern really is not giving an extra $300-400 a year to this particular fund. It's that how many more funds are we going to be asked to give? And how many, like, what are the end results? What are we getting in return for those investment? Or is it just gonna be, we're gonna get more and more money until we're priced out of our own location? And I think a lot of people in Lake Worth feel like they're being priced out of this location. And what is the city doing to not only use the money that they already have, because it's my understanding too, to change the name. I love Lake Worth Beach. I understand that word beach makes it really nice. But is it worth I mean, you tell me, how much money was it? $13 million to paint and change the name? I mean, how many millions of dollars was it to change I understand you're not answering questions, but how many millions of it was it to get this name up and running in the city? You know, so we just want to know, what are we getting in return for this
Thank you,
investment?
that's
Is it
time.
worth it?
Thank you. The budget is on the website. It's been on the website, and the proposed budgets have been on the website for weeks. You can certainly take a look at that and see, you can see exactly where the money's going. There's no hidden fees.
I would love to. I tried
Tentative.
looking. The only thing is government websites are not the easiest to navigate. So that's the only thing.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I
Yes?
just wanted to state that this was advertised as a special meeting for public comment for each agenda item. We normally do not have public participation.
Okay, thank you. Did we come up with that number?
Yes, it's $3.26.
$3.26
Yes, per month.
Per month.
per month, per address,
Correct.
Right, okay, thank you. So $3.86.
26.
20
Yes,
$26
$3.26 per month.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So $39 a year for stormwater.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now we're going to go on to the public hearings. Resolution 31-2024, the first public hearing adopting the fiscal year 2024-25 tentative millage rate. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Yeah.
But you want, please do.
We'll have to read, per the law, I just have something
Okay,
quickly to
go
read about okay, so this hearing's to set the tentative millage rate for the city of Lake Worth Beach, which there's no change from the prior year for the millage rate. This is to adopt the city's tentative millage rate of 5.945 per 1,000 assessed value, which is 8.22% more than the rollback rate of 5.0772 mils.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I do have a public comment.
Oh, okay. Mr. McVoy?
Could you just clarify, you may have said it in there, but it went by in the fine print a little bit. We are setting the millage rate at exactly the same millage rate as last year, correct?
Correct, it has not changed, yes.
It will bring in slightly more money because property values have increased slightly.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you want, go ahead and read that public comment.
Okay, the comment is from Sam Smith, 109 North Palmway. Despite the fact that the city of Lake Worth Beach has had increased property tax revenue over the last several years, including increases of 18% and 16% over the last 2 years, the city has failed to reduce its millage rate. The vast majority of other towns and cities in Palm Beach County have, in the face of these double-digit property tax revenue increases, reduced millage rates to reduce the high tax increases for property owners who do not have homestead exemptions. Property owners that do not have homestead exemptions include folks like small business owners, mom and pop landlords, and snowbirds, etc. The city repeatedly bemoans the housing and rental crisis, yet the city contributes to the crisis by imposing huge tax increases. Many landlords shoulder and then have to pass on to their tenants. If the city commission truly cares about the housing and rental crisis, then they should put their money where their mouth is and reduce the millage rate, as most other towns and cities have done, so that renters and other small business owners are not faced with huge property tax increases this year as they have faced over the last 2 years. That is the only comment that I have, Madam.
Thank you very much. Okay, on Resolution 31-2024, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. I thought we already did.
I thought we did too.
Yeah.
Do
I
we
don't know
have-
who made the motion, though. I didn't.
Okay, did you make the motion?
All right, then I'll move to approve.
Mr. Diaz made the motion.
Commissioner Diaz made the second. I didn't hear a motion.
Oh,
Who made the second?
I made the second, which I do recall. I don't know.
Who made the first?
Nobody.
Somebody make a motion.
I'll make the first, but I do have a question,
Okay,
and
Did we
first,
approve the
is-
millage? I missed it.
no, 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 we're doing
now?
that, we're trying to
Okay, so
do
you
that
approved-
now.
That's 31-24, right?
Yes.
31-2024, okay.
So I have a second. Do I have a motion for that second?
I do,
I know you want me to speak, but you make the motion.
I think I did.
He did.
Okay, then, Mr. McVoy made the motion, Mr. Diaz.
Who's on first?
This is supposed to be simple. Okay, you have a
Yes,
good
just
comment.
a question for our finance department. When we receive a number from the tax collector, tax assessor, tax collector, that says property values in Lake Worth went up by 10%, 18%, whatever it is, does that reflect like homesteaded places did not go up anything like 18 because they're capped at a 3% rise. So does that 18% reflect non-homesteaded, or does that reflect market value but not the assessed value? I never thought about that before, but a lot of Lake Worth is homesteaded, so it could only go up. Does that mean that the rest of it went up more than 18% in value?
Ooh, it's a nice time to ask that question.
I think that also includes new sales too,
Yeah.
sales assessments.
And new construction.
We get that from the
And
property
new
appraiser's
construction,
office.
right?
Yeah, you're right. It comes to us. I'm just, for our own edification and for the public's.
Yeah, so that would apply to new construction and, and how we set the budget, we just go by from last year's and we just increase it 18%. So if the homestead increase was not incorporated or as part of the increase, then it will not affect our budget. So if you look at it at our year-to-date in your budget book, you see that we're relatively closer to what we set for the budget. So it only applies to new construction.
Well, that wasn't
New
quite
construction,
my
you said.
question. One reads, in the newspaper, that property values went up by, in the last few years, quite large percentages. That is not what our taxes went up by because of the homestead things,
Well,
correct?
no,
And our
correct.
millage rate isn't going up.
Yes,
And
Unless I think when somebody when the homeowner moves out of the property, then.
Right, then the
It's a
cap
switch
comes
over,
off.
that's what-
Right,
right.
Sales.
right.
So, yeah,
So I think a lot of it has to do with sales, that's what they.
exactly.
Right.
So it's a
Yeah.
mixture, it's a lot of mixtures to it, so.
Right. So we have, and the actual budget amount, we'll get to that when we get to that, but our budget has certainly not gone up by 18% or anything
This-
even
this-
vaguely like
This
it.
year, only went up by like 8%.
Yeah.
For the past 2 years, as per the public comment, it was double digits for the past 2 years.
Yeah,
But this year is only 8%, so the increase is slowly,
Yeah.
slowing down. Right?
yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's fake news.
Okay,
Now we need to vote.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Aye. Don't forget me. Aye.
We can't forget Mimi. She's in a car. She's on her way to fun. Yeah, so it's unanimous. All in favor. Thank you. Resolution 32-2024, the first public hearing adopting the debt service rate.
Motion
You
to
wanna-
approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner, Vice Mayor Malega.
Second.
by-
Second.
Mimi seconded it. We're gonna let Mimi have that one.
We'll give it to Mimi.
And so would the Finance Department like to address us on this at all?
I
No?
don't have anything unless you have
All
something.
right. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution 33, 2024, first public hearing, adopt the fiscal year 24-25 proposed city budget. Do I have a motion?
Motion. I'll give it
Motion.
to Mr. Diaz.
And
Motion to
again,
approve.
could we state from the finance
Well, let
department?
me get through the motion first. We have a motion, Mr. Diaz, a second by Ms. Malega.
Yes.
Okay. You have a question?
Yeah, could we just have a statement from the financial department, how much, for people listening and so on, how much was the increase in the budget this year over last year?
Which piece of the budget?
The one we're voting on right now. Proposed city budget.
Don't think I have that exact number with me, but
Says right here.
I
Says right here.
I don't have last year's.
Operating budget appropriation equal of 207,168,355, and capital budget appropriation equal to $70,428,104.
Right, but what I'm looking at is the percentage increase over last year, ballpark.
I don't have that with me right now, but I
Can't
can,
do these aha questions.
yes, I can follow up with you. I do have the exact increases for this year. I can follow up if you'd like, or we could,
If you know, I think it's about the 8 or 9, right?
giving a ballpark.
I know
I
that
don't-
finance people don't like
No,
ballpark.
no. I mean,
but-
I can walk, I was going to walk you through the appropriation summary, just talk briefly about the source of funds, use of fund balance, and then total use of funds for this year, and then have Stan Tech do their modeling. Right now.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, we could go through, I mean, we could go through the individual funds
Sorry.
and do
No,
that.
no,
We could
no,
go-
no, no.
Sorry,
'cause
Commissioner.
it's-
We-
You
we
can
were
see from
just-
24 to 25, the changes, no.
Right, so the staff report that we have is that's the same staff report we've been presenting for the past few years.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
about
good.
that. Yeah, my voice is a little.
Closer to the
Yes.
microphone.
So the staff report that we have on there is what we've had for the past several years. We've never had to kind of like incorporate like what the difference is in total compared to last year's. But if people go online and go to the budget book by fund, we have a column for 2024 adopted budget versus now, and you'll be able to see the variance there on each individual tab
Okay, thank
from
you.
the books that you have.
It's just not added up.
It's just not added up
Okay.
in total.
All right.
But we.
And this is something we've been looking at now for the past couple of months. and
Correct,
Yeah.
Certainly
correct.
could, right.
It's
it's just for the public to have some idea, are we increasing a lot, a little?
If they go on each individual, for each fund, you'll see what was the adopted in fiscal year '24 versus fiscal year '25. But for the second hearing, we could come up with those numbers for you.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and yeah, between now and then we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Mimi, are you going to vote aye on this one?
Aye. Yeah,
Thank you.
aye.
Aye. D, Resolution 34, 2024. Folks, it's really hard if we can. 34, 2024, establish a stormwater rate for fiscal year 24 to 25. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Resolution 35 dash, would you like to say something, Mr. Brown?
I was going to mention something just based off some of the comments earlier.
Okay, sure.
But you guys have already approved the stormwater rate, but
Right.
just so everyone's aware, obviously the stormwater, the city is part of, all municipalities are part of the MS4, it's the municipal separate storm sewer system. And along with that, there are certain regulations we have to adhere to make sure we're doing our part to keep the lagoon clean, to keep our bodies of water clean and everything like that, which also ties into the NPDES, which is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, and all of those things. So what you're seeing in the stormwater rate is the cost of that operation for the city. And that is personnel, that's equipment, that's the actual operation itself, that's cleaning the drains, that's everything that goes into doing our part. And each year we have to submit per the MS4 all of our data for the city. Every municipality has to do this, which is why every municipality has a stormwater assessment, which goes toward that specific function. Like our sweeper logs, all of the things we do throughout the year, all of our quantities, everything that's done to basically do our part to keep our bodies of water clean and everything. So as people have probably realized over the past years, as we get more and more storms, you see the flooding is not the same now as it used to be. You see a lot of different things happening when we get all the rain we're getting now. So cities are having to ramp up what they're having to do to kind of remedy or at least alleviate the severity of a lot of the storm runoff and a lot of the flooding and additional things that are happening now that we didn't have to deal with, which is why you're seeing a lot of these rates increase, because we're having to do a lot more now in order to actually try and alleviate some of these situations. And as you see on some of these storms, we're just inundated. So at some point in time, and we are not unique, at some point in time, we're going to have to really put an investment into upgrading our system as far as the capacity and some of the other things that we're having to deal with, which is why you see a lot now with sea level rise and some of the other stuff going on, and cities raising their infrastructure and everything like that, because we're getting to a point where it's getting out of control. So we're having to invest a lot more into our system. So we don't see so much from these storms where people are getting their homes flooded now. And you can't pass a lot of roadways now that you used to be able to pass. And it's not even hurricanes now, it's just regular summer storms sometimes now.
Crazy.
When we don't have storms out there off our coast, where we're seeing a lot of these major impacts. So that's why you're seeing this increase in the stormwater rate, because we need to try and keep
We're
up.
part of a group.
We are part of a much larger system, and we're also trying to do our part, mainly for our residents, to make sure that we're not putting everyone in a situation where your home is now becoming an issue. As far as, and obviously FEMA just released new flood maps as well. So you keep seeing the flood zones change as far as you might have been in a different flood zone before.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of those have changed.
And I think people need to realize that as services and goods prices go up,
Correct.
like everywhere, it goes up for us as well. I mean, that's a sad fact. So, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just to clarify, you mentioned at the beginning, Assistant Manager, that part of it is protection of the Lake Worth Lagoon, because ultimately all stormwater that runs off of our streets through the whole piping system underneath the city winds up in the lagoon. And so we do have legal requirements to keep that water as clean as possible. But the main function of the stormwater system is to get stormwater off of the roads. And that's throughout the system, regardless of whether you have a big roof or a little roof or whatever. The water that gets eventually onto the roads has to be dealt with. Otherwise, we have flooding. And we've been the smallest fund, if I'm not mistaken, and finance can correct me, I believe our smallest fund is the stormwater fund. It's much smaller than what we spend on municipal sewer, on sanitary
correct.
sewer.
That's what you were just saying, the flooding is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Commissioner, because yes, all of our runoff, everything heads from west to east.
Yeah.
So everything heads toward the lagoon.
Right, we're at the last spot.
We are.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Resolution 35, 2024, establishing the refuse service annual assessment for fiscal year 24-25. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. May?
I was gonna say she disappeared.
I'm here. Yep. I for both of them.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Okay, now we're on to new business. And the first one is Resolution 36-2024, establishing the fees and charges for city services for fiscal year 2025.
Like 2026, we're jumping a whole year.
I'm sorry. I stand corrected. 2025, I'm living in the future. Let's have a motion,
Motion to approve.
and do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and I have a comment for this one.
You might be stealing my comment.
Well,
That's
I'm
good.
sorry, who was the second?
who seconded it?
I heard two voices.
I had the second, Commissioner Diaz.
Mr. Diaz had the second. Okay, I looked over the fees, and I mean, we haven't, they all seem reasonable. The one I have a problem with, the one I didn't want to talk about, is the empty lot, I'm sorry, page 37. This is the empty lot fee, the schedule of fees and charges for services. I have two issues. My first issue is not monetary. My first issue is, and I'm not asking for the answer right now, but I want to I want to find out at some point how we communicate to a landowner that they have to do this, that this is a requirement, that if they have a house or a lot that is vacant, that there's an obligation and a duty for them to report this to the city. Because that's sort of an arcane requirement, and I think we'd figure out our communications with things like this, I think, better for the citizens. My second issue is, when this was established, years before we were here, and a couple of years ago, and I don't know when, it went from like $150 a year to a top of $750 a year every year after starting with the 6th year. It goes from 200 to 300, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's too much. I mean, I understand that we are trying to encourage people to use their lots, but I just think that, let's say I bought an empty lot on speculation, I don't have the money to develop it now, really, $750 a year to this, I don't know how y'all feel about this, and I've heard from quite a few citizens
Yeah.
about this. I think it's too much. I think if there's, number one, let's let them find out, let's tell them that they have the requirement, and number two, although we want to, and I see Mr. Waters coming up here, thank you, although we do want to have our lots developed and our properties active, I think and maybe there's maybe for a commercial property, it should be higher, and for a resident, but I just think $750 a year is a lot to be asking folks to register their property. So having said that, I see Mr. Diaz's light on.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I almost feel like it's a little bit backwards, like because you have the registration fees, that's what you mentioned, the subsequent goes up. And then I see the chronic nuisance fees, and I feel like there's a number of properties that we've discussed that seems to be the bigger issue. Like,
Right.
I mean, I don't love seeing vacant lots everywhere, not everywhere, but I don't love seeing prime vacant lots that, could serve a better purpose throughout town. But the real problem is when they rise up to be a chronic nuisance. And so it almost seems like it's
I
kind
agree
of
with
backwards.
you. I wouldn't mind going higher on the nuisances, because that's when staff really has to get involved.
Yeah.
And we have to send out notices and all that stuff. So I would
And-
follow that.
Yeah, and I'm sure we have limitations, as Mr. Waters is going to come up and
He looks
educate
so
us.
He looks so
I'll just-
happy to
yeah.
be here. Now, Mr. McVoy let's have Mr. McVoy's comment first.
I also would like to thank the mayor for bringing this up. It was the same thing I was going to bring up too. And I suspect from what we're getting from facial expressions from our Director of Community Sustainability is we are probably limited by the state as to what we can do on nuisance fees. I see a nod. in which case, okay, we can't raise the nuisance fees where there actually is a concrete problem that the city is experiencing. It does seem sort of weird that if somebody simply has an empty lot and it isn't a nuisance, why would we be charging them more than what we charge for somebody who is actively causing a problem? That doesn't seem very logical. So I too have not, and I also have received a number of calls about it, not very comfortable with it. I don't know whether this is a time that we can change those, but if we can, I think we ought to consider doing so.
Mr. Diaz?
Yeah, I mean, I think something to distinguish too, because there's a lot of things in foreclosed, abandoned, and vacant, improved and unimproved lots. And I know the answer to this, unfortunately. Like, I know we can't necessarily separate them out, because it's like, it's one thing if it's a vacant lot that has like trees on it and is not necessarily, and is well maintained. It's another thing if it's a house or a building that could serve a better purpose for the city and it's sat vacant and empty for, decades.
I would
And it's a
agree with that.
problem.
Right, well, and that's the thing, that what's the definition of a chronic nuisance? If it's sitting empty for 10 plus years and it could be used for a better purpose, and then, that's something to discuss, but I know we're
And that
pretty
kind of,
limited.
and I think on part of that argument is that it sort of impinges, I own a lot, I keep it clean, there's no drug dealers, and they're not making a mess, it's my property. I have some, the property rights argument. So that's a piece of it. And if we have a lot that's empty that that the city's having to take care of, then we have the assessment, for lot clearing and that sort of thing. So I mean, that part of it is handled. Ms. Milligan?
Thank you. While I do agree with everything that's been said, the flip side is, when we do have a vacant lot that's a chronic nuisance, what do we do and how do we get a hold of that? We have one in District 1 that's on the other side of Pinecrest of the cemetery on Pine Street, that on a daily is riddled
It's a problem.
with bad activity,
It's
bad players.
Owned by a church.
And we're trying to
know.
deal with it, but it's like, what do you do? So there is, I do feel bad for people who are mowing their lawns, keeping it clean, picking up the garbage. But I know that personally, I report more to Mr. Interim City Manager Brown on empty lots that have dumping, that are overgrown, that are that are invasive. So to me, there's a lot more bad players in land, vacant owners, than there are good, and I don't think that the good ones should be punished for the bad actors.
And that's
So
the-
I agree
right.
with this conversation, but I don't want us to get distracted with the fact that we have, I would say
Well,
that
it's
the
a
scales are
problem.
very much tilted in the bad players.
But we have ways of dealing with that with lot clearing.
We're trying
I
without
know,
me
and
going
that,
through there every
I've
single day
been
and chasing
approached
people
by
out.
I've been approached by the neighbors there too, and I actually dealt with that church years ago. They were trying to build a building and they never got it done.
We'll talk about that.
There's a
another
couple,
conversation.
there's an empty lot on Lucerne and D Street where there's a milk crate under a tree, and it's if you want to buy drugs, there you go. And it's an empty
That
lot.
is not a public service announcement either, by the way.
It's a
But I would
cautionary tale.
love to know, what can we do?
All right, so
Director?
let me ask a question. Let me ask a question, Mr. Waters. Where it's, it says nuisance fees, chronic nuisance of administration fee,
It might be
administration.
easier for me to explain than you to
Why
ask the
don't you
question.
explain it
because-
to us?
This
Okay.
is William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. I sent a recommendation to Finance that sheet probably has an incorrect title. It just should say co-compliance continued. And that'll solve part of the confusion of that sheet.
I don't understand that.
Because the chronic nuisance has absolutely nothing to do with vacant registry.
Well, I thought it was in the wrong place.
Well, we didn't have anywhere else to put it when it was put there. Those are actually administrative fees to administer the declaration of a chronic nuisance, which is authorized by the special magistrate. Most chronic nuisance properties are already running in a daily fine that can be as high as $500 a day, which is stipulated by state statute. Those
Right.
are service fees that we charge for the declaration and the management of a chronic nuisance plan. That's all that part is.
Okay.
The vacant registry was put in place, I believe, right before I got to the city in end of 2009, beginning of 2010. It was, I believe, 5 years ago, that it was raised to be cumulative. It would go up year by year. That is a city policy directed by you.
Well, right.
But it wasn't by us. Don't
Right.
say-
Well, by you,
that
the
we
city
can change.
commission.
It wasn't by
So
this board.
You can change it. The fee has not changed substantially. We did have a different fee one for vacant improved properties,
Right.
and one for vacant unimproved properties. The private entity that was managing it for us could not figure out how to charge one fee for
They were a
place
mess.
for the building and one fee where there was no building. So we made them commensurate. Now that we collected ourselves, we could charge a less amount or a different amount between improved properties that are vacant versus unimproved properties that are vacant. So we're open to your pleasure as to what you would like to charge. It does provide a vehicle for us to have a contact, an email, and a phone number to contact. But we can't say, we know you're a really good property owner and you don't have to register. We know that you're a really bad one
Right.
and you have to. So everybody has to be treated the same. So there's a happy median. And I spend most of my time explaining that we have a lot of rules that for the bad apples that negatively affect the good apples. But unfortunately, the good apples have to pay the price for the bad apples every day.
For those who are listening, though, improved means there's a building on the lot.
Yes.
Unimproved means it's a vacant lot.
And I'm going to
Yes.
say, I mean, there's a few houses in the city that I wish it was a vacant lot.
Yes.
I mean, really.
Improved and unimproved might not be our
Now,
definition.
it would be a little bit more difficult to charge a different fee for commercially or mixed zone property that's vacant versus residential zone property. It is possible, but it's going to put an additional burden on staff to be able to notify. As for the notification, when it came in-house, we sent a courtesy notice to all the properties we identified through GIS that were vacant, improved, or unimproved. A code case did not start or was even cited until 90 days after that.
Okay.
And that was another notice giving them 90 days to register their property before it actually went to the magistrate and possibly led to a daily fine.
Right.
So essentially, everybody's been given 2 notices. We've had a lot of compliance, a far greater compliance than we've had when we had a private provider. However, we are noticing people, and they were noticed way back in 2000, I believe it was 14, when we formalized it a little more. And I can't remember exactly what well we did to the ordinance, but we changed it, and then we did notify at that time all the properties that we thought fell under the requirement to be registered. So there is a note, we don't have an annual notification process except to look at the list that we have, run a report and see which ones have registered,
Will you
which
send
ones
out a
haven't.
notice? Do you send it, that's a question. Do you send out a notice to the vacant property and saying,
Remember,
It's
we
like-
just got this program under house this
Okay,
year.
so
So
that
this
is-
is the first year that we've sent them out.
because when my business license is due, I get a notice, your business license.
Yes.
So maybe that would be.
And they will be sent a renewal notice.
Right.
Like, some of them are already having to pay 25, even though they just paid 24 3 months ago. And there's some quibbling about that, but it's charged basically on a fiscal year basis versus a calendar year basis.
Right, 24, 25, what?
We're in
Oh, the
fiscal
year,
year
okay.
24, we're getting ready to go into fiscal
I'm
year
having trouble with the
25.
year tonight. Okay. Okay, thank you. That explains it.
So
But,
if you would like to change or alter the fee,
right,
or eliminate the escalation of it, or create a schedule that has a differentiation between residentially zoned properties, which will be single-family up to multifamily 40. All the other zoning districts in the city are mixed use.
right,
We could do that.
or industrial.
How much more complicated is that for staff, though, versus just keeping it like this,
Fortunately,
but
we
us
don't
adjusting the
have-
price?
Fortunately, we don't have a bazillion vacant properties in the city. It's around 300 to 400. So it's not insurmountable. And we have a staff person that you all approved last year for this fiscal year dedicated to working on this, as well as the short-term rental,
Right.
whatever you all decide to do. Yes, we have them, no, we don't.
Got
So we
it.
have a staff person that is in place and is doing a pretty good job with it.
I think we should personally cap it at 500.
I think it's too high.
I don't think it's too high because there are so many people in the city who land bank and who, again, aren't helping. And $500, I just don't think
Well,
is.
maybe
if-
for an improved property, $500.
For one with a house on it, or a
Improved- Or a
building,
building on it.
right.
Because it's, if you own a rental property, you really want a renter in there. And people, it's well understood that if a building stands empty, it does not improve the building.
Unless it's owned by a foreclosed and it's been sitting there for years
However,
and the
I may
bank doesn't
caution
care.
you is that we have people maintaining their business licenses because our business license charge in the city is relatively low. For a residential property, I believe the use and occupancy fee is either $50 or $75 a year, and then the commensurate business tax receipt is around $90 to $100. So for $150 and you have a building, you can have an active business license to keep it vacant.
You shouldn't have said that out loud.
I'm totally open to full transparency and letting you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
know
yeah.
what we get into. And we've also encouraged, I don't know how many dozens of people to do unities of title So their property's governed under one registration versus, we had one person, I think, that had 7 properties that all looks like one property, but it's not. It's 7 parcel control numbers, and we have to have a registration for each. So many of them appreciated the fact, oh, I'm not paying $200 times 7, I'm now paying $200 times 1.
No, that's what we're supposed to be doing, is being friendly to the residents and helping them guide, because a lot of people just don't know. I also just know that we have a lot of people in this community who just sit on their property and don't do anything with it. And unfortunately, most of them do have fines running for us doing their lot clearance.
And that's the other way that you kind of get the money, you know.
If we ever, they're just
well,
running
the-
and running and running until
when-
we foreclose on them, and then hopefully
Or
we'll
if
get
they
the
get
money.
sold, or if they get sold.
Well, there's 2 things that are happening on the ones, Commissioner Malega. They often do have a daily fine running that turns into a lien, and then all costs that we incur to maintain the property goes on the tax card as an assessment if it's not paid. And if those taxes aren't paid within 3 years, it probably goes into tax collection or selling it at the courthouse steps. And we do eventually get some money, but it's not always a direct one-for-one.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
so I'm looking at page 43, which is the single residential rental property application fee for use and occupancy certificate. So that's the application fee, it's $50. But
That's
that,
for registering under use and occupancy as a part of a business license. Our business license has 3 parts.
right, okay, so that's the application fee. And then there's the,
Business tax receipt,
which is another,
about 100, 110.
okay. And then there's the,
The inspection that happens every 3 years.
right, okay, okay. So, and I'm, you know, acting against my own best interest here, but maybe the $50 should be a little bit higher. I mean, that might be something if you're applying for rental. And I mean, for landlords, it's getting hard too. I mean, every time
Okay.
I turn
Now,
around,
because that registration fee is part of FY '25,
right?
those renewals have already been sent out.
Well, but next year then, I
And then we
mean,
might look at that, we'll come back to you at some point during the fiscal year and bring together, because I would like to recommend that we raise the business tax receipt schedule, because it has not been raised since COVID hit, and we can do it every 3 years, up to 10%, is it 5%? I can't remember.
I do have a question. Can we just, is there any way we could bring this back and we can adjust this fee schedule in the essence of time? Can we make adjustments to
We can
this?
do an
And-
amendment.
we can do an
We
amendment.
can
Okay,
amend
instead
it
of spending
Okay.
so
later
much
in the
time
year.
on this
That's
right
good.
now.
Later in the year.
That's a
We
good
need
idea.
to give some direction.
But
We
let-
can
let-
approve
yeah,
it, just say we
we're
can
not
amend
done
it
yet.
later.
So the notices have gone out this year already, but if we wait till next year, we'd be in the same boat because the notices would have gone out.
I'm going to bring it, to try to get it to you like in March.
Okay,
And that way we can do the 2 ordinances that changes the business tax receipt schedule.
Okay.
And then we can have everything in place before we send out the renewals in July.
okay, thank you. Mr. McVoy?
Could you clarify whether I understand correctly, and maybe Commissioner Malega can pipe up too on that? Is it correct to say that there might be 4 cases in this bucket that we have this, increasing rate? One would be unimproved that are well taken care of, mowed, clean, blah, 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 no problem, just nothing built on it. Unimproved, meaning nothing built on it, but it's a problem, it's a mess. And then the same 2 categories, but with a building on it, which is called improved. Is that a fair description that we probably have all 4 of those cases in the town, to your knowledge?
We do, but the 2 cases where they're a mess, probably 80% of those have a running code
Right.
case on them or a recurring code case on them, in addition to the fact they should be registered on vacant registry.
Well, you beat me to my next question, which was that. So the ones that are problematic, whether they have a building or don't have a building, we already are assessing them some sort of penalty, which we may or may not cover all our costs, but we're doing something that's quite a bit higher.
Yep.
Would it then be reasonable, and I don't know how you do it, but I'm asking you, that we not have quite such an increasing fee on the good actors? Whether they have a building on it or not,
We're going to have to treat them the same on when it comes to vacant registry. We're going to get them, if you want to put it that way, under the co-compliance activities that will happen for the property. Because we're not going to be able to say, okay, Mr. So-and-so, you have a code case on your property, so your use and occupancy registration, your vacant registry occupation is going to be X, Y, Z. And dear Mr. So-and-so, your property looks great, so your use and your vacant registered registration is going to only be X and Y.
Right, but we de facto do distinguish by, as you
code
said,
base.
the bad ones
Have
have some
stuff,
code.
right.
So really, if we were to lower this to something more reasonable, we would be helping out the good ones. And it
Yeah,
wouldn't
I-
really cause any harm on trying to
Right.
do better on the bad ones.
Yeah, I,
So let's lower it.
that's,
Yep, that's what I said.
That's
Bring it
what I
forward.
As you're
But
suggesting.
may
Thank
we?
you.
but
Boy, it took us
as,
a half an hour to get
Our
there.
assistant director mentioned, our budget for this year is predicated on these fees staying in place. And as I mentioned, we have a staff, an FTE, that's half funded by the revenue from this. I need to work with her, Monica, to determine how much of a hit we can take in reducing the fee that doesn't jeopardize the funding for that position.
So
okay, so
Come
if we approve it the way it is, with the understanding in the public eye of everyone that's concerned about this, we will be looking at this and coming back and
for this second
probably
reading.
amending it in the next short period of time. Is that a reasonable
What
statement?
we can do from my standpoint in our office, and we did this for most people, that's those that, except for those that really coughed up and said, oh, my property's been vacant forever. Since we were starting it over, we were charging the first year fee to everybody. So we can
Right.
continue to do that
Oh.
until, so the ones that.
Okay.
The ones that, and I'll probably get hit by Yolanda and Krista and Ashley, but
Well,
I'll deal with it.
you can take
But
it.
we can continue doing that until you make your final decision
Okay.
as they come in, because our renewals are now. We will just charge them, because some of them are in their second year now because their first year was last year.
Right, okay, that would be helpful. That
I
would,
think we can do that.
So are we giving guidance to change it between now and the second reading?
no,
Or
no.
They're gonna do
No,
an
they're
analysis
We're
and
going to do an
bring it
amendment.
I would also like to see if we can get
You're
consensus to have a update on which of the bad apples, bad players are indebted to us that we can proceed with foreclosure enforcement. If not right now,
But
in the
what
future.
Let me have a caveat to that, is that many of the bad actors you would like us to foreclose on have a gigantic mortgage on their property. And the only way to foreclose is we pay off that mortgage,
Or
or. we-
someone else, and
We encourage someone
I
else.
love foreclosures. I love foreclosures, but I think they're a tool that we don't use enough,
They're
often
expensive.
enough. What?
They're expensive.
Well, we're working on that. If there is a giant mortgage and some other person comes in, even if the city doesn't get it, our fees would be paid, and some other person would get it and hopefully do a better job.
And then we work with them. We already
Right.
established a policy that if you're out there in Never Never World and you find a property that's a horrendous mess, and has a huge code case on it, don't let that discourage you from buying it. Come talk to us. If you're the person who remediates that property and fixes it, we will give you credit for every single penny you pay on it, and we will reduce whatever's left to 10%.
Right.
And oftentimes, based on our lien capping, which I won't go into all those details, people are buying new property, it may have like a several $100,000 lien against it, and they can completely wipe it out by buying it and improving it.
Yeah.
Perfect, yeah, I'd like
Yeah,
to
so I
talk
don't,
more about that.
there's a couple there's, sometimes you do find, we're in the middle of one now, where there's no mortgage. And there's a heavy fine, and we're going to mediation on that one. But our city attorney, we've been in discussions with this for a long time. I'm like, hire a young lawyer, teach him foreclosures, and just put him to work. It's not rocket science. So he's not a, and that's something we've been talking about for a while, because I think we need to be more active, because
There's
if,
some other creative ideas we've had too, but most of my creative ideas have been deemed illegal, but that's okay. I'll keep trying.
there's always a way to find. So, all right, thank you very much, I appreciate that. So I think we're going to
Motion
pass
to
it.
approve?
Motion to approve with a second by
Second.
Mr. Diaz, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next up. Fiscal year B, fiscal year 2025, contribution from enterprise operations.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Fiscal year 2025, position count. Do I have a motion
Motion,
to approve?
yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Fiscal year 2025 administrative charge for services. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye? Aye, okay, thank you, Mimi.
Motion
Okay,
to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Do I have a
Go
second?
Bills!
Go Bills.
Motion to adjourn.
Go Bills!
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Sorry,
Good
who
night,
was the
everyone.
second?
Oh,
Who was the
Who's the
second?
second?
Mr. McVoy.
Mr. McVoy.
I think so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.